10 years as a university or as Singularity, 4 years here at Global Summit, it's a pleasure for me to give this opening keynote slot every year. And I think about what it is I want to convey during this time. What is it that I can share with you that's new or a different way of looking at it that's going to be meaningful to yourselves as leaders, as CEOs, as entrepreneurs, as mothers, fathers. And I want to talk this year about a series of meta trends. You know, a lot of the trends that are going on in the world right now are almost unstoppable, and they're somewhat predictable. And it's perhaps this which has been Ray's superpower of envisioning and making extraordinary predictions of where the world is going. So I want to share with you sort of the meta trends I'm seeing. I've got a book which comes out this January called The Future is Faster Than You Think. I love the subtitle, How Converging Technologies Are Transforming Business, Industries, and Our Lives. And it's the realization that this convergence is what makes this different now and here. So cheaper, faster computers, and we're about to see this incredible increase as quantum computing comes online and impacts almost every industry as it impacts machine learning and the materials genome and pharmaceutical discoveries. And I'm not even talking about quantum, but regular classical computation is accelerating sensors, networks, AI, robotics, 3D printing, synthetic biology, AR, VR, blockchain. As computation gets stronger, so do these. And it used to be that you could be the expert in any one of these, and that was sufficient. But it's no longer the case. It's the convergence of these technologies that is really transforming our world. It's how 2, 3, or 4 of these are coming together and creating new business models. And as entrepreneurs, I think that's the most important thing that we should be looking at. What are the new business models? Not just the new technology, right? Being an expert in the problem and not the technology, but the business models are where the juice is. The second thing going on right now, and I can feel this, and hopefully you can as well, is that the rate at which technology is getting faster is itself getting faster. We are accelerating the rate of technological acceleration. And there's a multitude of things that are coming together to make this possible, right? More people are now connected than ever before. They have access to more computational than ever before. And they have the technology they're using is cheaper than ever before. And they're getting access to more intelligent supplementation than ever before. So we're literally accelerating, the first derivative of our acceleration. I hate to call it a jerk, but anyway, for the physicists in the room, it is getting faster and faster. And so I want to call out a few meta trends that are important, and I'll speak about just a few of these. The first, and you saw a part of these slides, I'll show some of them again that Will showed, which is we are seeing increasing global abundance. It's hard for us to realize that as we see the crisis news network and all the negativity in the world, but what people have access to is more abundant than ever before. We're seeing an acceleration as things demonetize. Things are becoming, products and services becoming cheaper and cheaper and becoming available to more and more people. And this in itself is creating more increased global abundance. Everyone, everywhere is being connected at gigabit connection speeds. And this is going to change every one of our lives. I don't care what business you're in, the fact that every single person on the planet is being connected at gigabit connection speeds is going to be transformative. But it's not just people. We're connecting everything on this planet. IoT and IoE, we'll go into this in a little bit. And what this allows is us to ask questions like we'd never asked before. If everything is connected, we're heading towards a world where you can know anything, anytime. Number 6. A revolution in personalized, autonomous, fast, and cheap transportation of people and things, right? My dear friend Ramez Nam talks about this beautifully. Increasing human intelligence. And this is about AI and AR support of you to learn what you need to know in exactly the moment you need it, but also this incredible transformation before us on BCI. Increasing human longevity, health span, increasing capital abundance, and increasing global cheap energy. Again, what Ramez talks about so beautifully. So these are 10 of the 20 that I'm tracking. I'd like to dive into a half of these and talk about what they mean to us. So I want to pause here that I don't think any of us truly understand how fast the world is changing. And I think ultimately that's the role that we at Singularity University, you, all of us, play here at SU and in our Abundance Digital and Abundance 360 ecosystem, is to help us understand, keep our finger on the pulse of how fast things are changing. You know, a lot of people are fearful about the future. In fact, most people are fearful about the future. Hopefully, as we have these conversations, we get excited about the future, excited about the tools that we have to solve problems. So let's hit on this idea again. I can't help but focus on it because you are, as members of the Singularity community, really the representatives to the world to help and pause in the conversation to say, hold it, I know that you see all this negativity around you, but let's look at the data. Let's take a second and look at the data, the way the world truly is, because again, the news media's news cycles are designed to connect our eyes to their advertisers, and we pay 10 times more attention to negative news than positive news, and that's all we get fed. And as a result, all we see is the world in hell in a handbasket. So you saw this, let me summarize. We've tripled the per capita global income over the last 100 years. The lifespan has doubled. The cost of food has dropped 20-fold. Energy's dropped 100-fold. Transportation, thousands of fold. Communications, millions, if not billions of fold cheaper. Take a look at this. This is partly what you saw Will present, which is, increasing global prosperity or a decrease in the number of people living below extreme poverty. But check out this last portion right here, which is the data presented at the start of this year. It's continuing and it's accelerating, right? The world is secretly, quietly becoming more and more abundant. Increasing global literacy. And this point, Will showed it, but again, what was life like when half of your children died before the age of 5? What did it feel like to live in that kind of a world where you didn't name your child because it hurt less if they died? The chance of having a mother die in childbirth has become de minimis in much of the world. Global average life expectancy has doubled. I'll talk about this, and you'll hear during other programs, that we're on the verge of doubling the human life expectancy again, right? The most precious thing we have is our lives and the time and how we use that time. I was having a conversation at lunch with family about exponential family luncheon about increasing global populace, and aren't you concerned about that? Bill Gates has 2 great TED Talks on this subject. But look at this. In the 1950s, about 100 families had 6 or more children per family. You do 2 things to a population center. You make them healthier and better educated. The number of children per family plummet. And you can see how rapidly that's decreasing over time. Here's another way to look at it. The child replacement rate for the Earth is 2.1 children per family is what allows break even. We're decreasing. In the US, we're below the US population replacement level. Globally, we're at 2.42. In red, airlines are clearly still the safest means of transportation on the planet. That blue line are automobiles. When we get to autonomous cars, those will drop down to a near 0 death rate as well. Global disaster deaths. So what's happening in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s? Why are the number of deaths per hurricane, per flood, per storm, per epidemic, why are they decreasing? It's not that there are less of them. It's that we have access to the data to predict them better, to get help in that golden hour, right? These technologies are supporting this. And this is from Steven Pinker's book called The Better Angels of Our Nature, where he shows us we're living during the most peaceful time ever in human history, which is really hard to fathom, but it's true. So let's talk about why this is happening. Why now? For me, it's the impact of these exponential technologies. It's the result of the technologies that you guys are creating, investing in, utilizing to make the world a better place. Another impact of exponential technologies is to take what was scarce and make it abundant over and over again. And what would you think of as more scarce than a beautiful 4, 5, 6-carat diamond? Right? There's a company not far from here called the Diamond Foundry. In one end comes methane, water, electricity. Out the other end comes perfect diamonds, 6 carats, 8 carats, 10 carats. How big would you like it? Would you like imperfections in it? No problem. You want to see what a real diamond ring looks like? Check this out. All of a sudden, we go from scarcity to abundance to a squanderable abundance of what we want. Technology is the force that takes what used to be scarce and makes it abundant. So inside your industries, inside your services, how do you take what you're doing right now and go from a scarcity mindset of I'm going to put my arms around it and meter it out a little bit at a time to an abundance mindset? Because if you're not doing that, someone else is. So what do you think of as scarce? Energy? No. We live on a planet bathed in 6,000 times more energy from the sun than we consume as a species. Right? We used to kill whales on the ocean to light the nights. Then we ravaged mountainsides for coal. Then we started drilling kilometers under the water. You know, we are not far from a penny per kilowatt hour from the sun. And believe me when I say the poorest countries on the planet are the sunniest countries on the planet. You have abundant energy, that means abundant water. We just awarded last year the Water Abundance X Prize, pulling liters, 1,000 liters, 2,000 liters out of the atmosphere in 24 hours from renewable energy. It turns out there are quadrillions of liters of water in the atmosphere distributed evenly around the planet. If you have energy, you've got water. Time, money, resources, expertise, we'll talk about some of these. The other thing that's going on is we're going from those things that used to be so scarce, right? Bandwidth used to be scarce. It's plummeting in cost, as is computational power, as is storage costs, as is sequencing the human genome from $100 million to below $1,000 today. And one of the reasons that the world is getting better is that you as entrepreneurs are trying more and more startups, more and more crazy ideas. Remember, the day before something is truly a breakthrough, it's a crazy idea. And inside your company, if you're stuck on trying reasonable ideas, predictable ideas, linearly expected ideas, you're never going to have a breakthrough. So where and how do you try that? So in 2000, to start an internet-based company, it was about a $5 million cost for the servers, for the software, for the people, for the bandwidth. You know, that dropped over time to the point where it's now cheap. It's now easy to have an idea, go put something up on the web, maybe go start a Kickstarter campaign or whatever it might be, and test and find out if people want to buy it. So the number of ideas being tried is exploding. It's not that entrepreneurs have necessarily better ideas. They may, you may. It's just that entrepreneurs were willing to try and experiment and fail and try again over and over again, while large corporations have to have it approved properly and make sure that it's okay and that it doesn't disrupt something internally. And so we only try that idea at the end of the process where it's dead on delivery. The other thing that's going on right now that supplements that is that we're at a time of massive capital abundance. You know, we have an unprecedented influx of capital around the world from a range of areas. So back in 2017 in the US and in Europe, we hit all-time capital highs. Then we hit them again in 2018. We're going to hit them again in 2019. More and more capital available to invest in companies. Right? Crowdfunding is hitting all-time highs. Look at this. By $300 billion by 2025, which means it doesn't matter where you live. If you've got an idea, it's a meritocracy. You can be in the middle of no place with a good bandwidth connection and have your ideas funded by the crowd. I love this quote from Masa-san, who's just raising his next multi-$100 billion fund. I totally believe the singularity is coming in the next 30 years. That's why I'm in a hurry to aggregate cash and to invest. The next decade is going to see the transformation of every single industry, not some, every industry. We're also going to create more wealth in the next 10 years than we have in the entire past century. And here's what's going on. Capital abundance plus the 6Ds, demonetization in particular, means that entrepreneurs are running more experiments, more crazy ideas, and more business models. Right? YouTube gets started by Chad Hurley on his credit cards and sold to Google for $1.6 billion 18 months later. There's no way to explain Lyft and Uber to enterprise rent-a-car, the taxi fleets over here. Check this out. This is an eye chart, but on the far left is 2011, and each of these logos is a billion-dollar startup. Look how fast it accelerates to 2015. The rate at which entrepreneurs, all of you, are creating companies, shots on goal, maybe 1 in 1,000 will succeed and be a unicorn. And then today, we're at 360 unicorns in 2019. Another meta trend going on right now that is so impactful, so important for us to be talking about, it's the notion that everyone is about to be connected at gigabit connection speeds. So today, in the US, in China, in Europe, in Asia, around the world, is the beginning of the deployment of 5G, right? So your device over here, instead of at 10 megabits or 100 megabits, is now at 10 gigabits. What that means is you can download a motion picture in under a second. It means you can take your LG or Samsung TV and put it on the wall and plug it in. It's got a connection automatically. It's going to transform, and it's intersecting with AR and VR and AI. Besides 5G, it's Google Loon, it's Greg Weiler, and his OneWeb constellation is being launched right now as we speak. It's SpaceX with their Starlink launching 12,000 satellites, giving us gigabit connection speeds. But it's not just that. Amazon has got their Kuiper satellite system of 3,000 satellites at $100 billion. In fact, there is a global explosion in connectivity around the world. We're about to reach a period of time in the next 4 to 6 years, right now, right here, no one's talking about this, where we're going from half the world being connected at 3.8 billion people to the entire globe being connected, where all of us are connected all the time, everywhere. Right? So what happens when 4.2 billion new minds enter the global conversation? Right? These 4 billion new individuals coming online, they're all going to want to create, to discover, to consume, to buy, to upload. They're all entrepreneurs. How do you tap into them? How do you tap into that incredible wisdom and intelligence around the world? Right? At the end of the day, these are tens of trillions of dollars flowing into the global economy. The old economic systems are no longer valid. No one counts these 4 billion minds entering the global economy. And if you thought the world was going fast, wait till 4 billion new inventors come online. They're all connected to gigabits. They all have access to Google or Baidu. They all have access to quantum computing in the cloud. They all have access to 3D printing in the cloud. What are they going to start to create? Because these 4 billion people, the last billion, the rising billion, they've been entrepreneurs to survive. And they're about to get access to incredible tools. We're going to see this uptick in the rate of global innovation that we've never seen before. This is the acceleration of the acceleration. But besides people being connected, it's everything. Right? My friends at Cisco talk about the IoT and the IoE, 20 billion connected devices, 1 trillion sensors. Right? Your Oura Ring, your Apple Watch, your devices you're wearing on your body. A decade later, it's 500 billion connected devices, 100 trillion sensors. And from McKinsey, $6.2 trillion of global economics in the next 5 years from this everything being connected. Huge wealth, right? When I talk about creating more wealth in the next 10 years than we have in the entire past century, it's things like this. I love this example. Car data, right? We never think about autonomous cars being a mechanism for creating data value. But car data from autonomous cars alone will generate $750 billion of revenue by 2030. So if we've got sensors everywhere, hundreds of private satellites, thousands of private satellites, millions of drones, every autonomous car generating 750 megabytes of data per second, and augmented reality headwear, your Magic Leap with forward-looking cameras, seeing everything, we're heading towards a future where you're going to be able to know anything you want, anytime you want, anywhere you want. And I can't express the impact of this. So I want you to imagine that your employees, your CEOs, your kids, right? I teach my kids this. It's not what you know, it's the questions you ask. It's soon going to be available and possible to know anything. You can ask your AI, what's the average spectral color of a man's blazer in this audience, and it will find that out for you. Or walking down Madison Avenue, and does it correlate to a advertising campaign? You're going to start to ask questions that were never askable before because the data is there to be mined, open sourced, available there all the time. We're heading towards a future of perfect knowledge where you can know anything you want, anytime, anywhere. Another place we're heading, and it's the convergence of augmented intelligence, is the notion that we're heading to just-in-time education, where 5G plus AI plus augmented reality will allow you to learn something in the moment you need it, in that exact moment in time. Right, where it's not going and studying, it's where your AR glasses show you how to do an emergency surgery or fix something or unpack something or program something, whatever it might be. One of the companies that I've been tracking in LA that's creating a virtual AI version of Tony Robbins. If you know Tony, he's a friend of Singularity University. He and I are writing a book together on longevity. And this company is basically digitizing Tony Robbins into an app. It's consuming everything he's ever said in video, on tape, on audio, in his books, and it's taking that body of knowledge and training a machine learning protocol that if you ask the machine learning version of Tony, it answers the same as he would. Can you imagine that? Right? Can you imagine that process of training up a machine learning protocol with enough examples, enough over and over again? So imagine being able to have multiple versions of yourself. This is one of the directions that we're heading. But it's not just using AR and 5G and machine learning. It's also increasing human intelligence. There's probably nothing more valuable to the president of a country or the president and CEO of a company than the intelligence of your employees. And we're at the very beginning of the dawn of massive multi-billion-dollar investments of connecting our brains with the cloud, right? We have 100 billion neurons and 100 trillion synaptic connections, and everything you've thought or feel or hear or have learned is confined in those synaptic connections. Can we connect that with the cloud, right? So Brian Johnson at Kernel, Elon at Neuralink, Open Water, Facebook, Google, IBM, and many governments are investing billions of dollars. If we can connect our brains with the clouds and you can think and Google as you think and get the answer, right? So this was the prediction of Time magazine. Of course, if you look at Ray's predictions, you can ask him tomorrow, right? His prediction is we're going to be there in 2035. So what's it like when we have human-level AI by 2029 and our brains are connected to the cloud by 2035? If you thought the world was moving fast now, get ready. And if you thought this prediction of 2035 was crazy, look at the investments by the world's leading tech companies and what they're focused on today. For me, this gives credence to that kind of a predictive. It's the very beginning, right? We're just, a dozen doublings away from being there. What else is going on right now? Another meta trend I track and focus on is extending the healthy human lifespan. How do we add 20 or 30 healthy years on your life? How do we make 100 years old than you 60? And then how do we make 120 then 150? What is aging anyway? Is it natural? Should we all just assume it? Or is it a disease? Our bodies were never evolved to live past age 30. You would go into puberty at age 13 and you'd have a baby. And by the time you were 26, your baby was having a baby. And before we had Whole Foods and McDonald's and food was scarce, the best thing you could do was give your bits back to the environment and not steal food from your grandchildren's mouths. But that's changed. And it's this decade that extraordinary work is going on. I've had the pleasure to co-found 3 companies, and I'm tracking a dozen others that I'm investing in or supporting. And these companies have in the lab, I don't have Viome on here in Naveen's company, but in the microbiome side as well, these companies in the lab are focusing on how do we extend the healthy human lifespan. And we still can't take it with us. So at the end of your life, what is another 20 or 30 healthy years worth to you? It's a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity, right? So one of the areas is we can now begin to digitize ourselves and basically create a 100 gigabit file of our bodies, and we can do this every year. Every year I go in and get digitized at something called the health nucleus. But here's the results. From the first 1,200 patients who went through this digitization process, these were people who were presumed healthy, right? And so we think we're healthy, we're all optimists, but we don't actually truly know. I'm a pilot, I fly 2 different airplanes. Before I take off, I make sure all the systems are working every time. If anything's out of whack, I don't take off. But we don't have that until we show up in the hospital with a pain in our side, right? So out of the first 1,200 healthy patients, these were wealthy, healthy patients, 14.4% had something that was a significant immediate follow-up, right? 2% had brain aneurysms, 2% had high-grade tumors, 3.4% had significant cardiac disease. I mean, so we're talking about the fact that we don't truly know what's going on inside our body, but we can, right? We're heading towards a world where we're going to be able to track our bodies and find disease at stage 0 and zap it at the very beginning. Why we age? Remember I said we didn't live past age 30? So if you look over here, it turns out the stem cells in our body, basically by age 30, are diminished down a factor of 100. Our bodies were never designed to survive. So our stem cells, our regenerative engine of our body, basically drift away. So there are a number of companies focused on how do we revitalize your stem cell population, right? How do we give you stem cells to restore function, to restore vitality? This is Dr. Martine Rothblatt, a dear friend of Ray's and myself. She has dedicated her life to lung disease, in particular, regrowing lungs. So you can see here on the far right, this is a trachea that's 3D printed out of collagen, and down over there is a very fine mesh lung 3D printed out of collagen that will be repopulated by stem cells to regrow lungs. This is another company or technology of senolytic medicines. You might know Unity Biosciences, backed by Jeff Bezos. And this is a concept that we, over the age of our lives, accumulate a multitude of senile cells, cells that have not become cancers, cells that have not done what they're supposed to, which is die, but cells that stick around and just generate inflammatory factors. And they cause a lot of our disease. And so this is technology to find those senile cells and destroy them and allow stem cells to repopulate. In mice, they hit a 30% extended lifespan, and they're now in human testing. For me, this is one of the most miraculous companies. This is a friend of mine, Osman Kibar. This is a $12 billion private company that has 0 revenues, right? And that should click something for you, like why are they worth $12 billion with 0 revenues? Because in their labs right now, they have mastered an ability to control cell-to-cell communications, what's called the Wnt pathway. And they've got, in testing right now, basically small molecule pharmaceuticals that can zap almost a dozen different solid cancers, stop them dead in their tracks: Alzheimer's, degenerative disc disease, tendinopathy, pulmonary fibrosis. And in phase 3, osteoarthritis, a single injection to regrow cartilage in your spine or in your knees or in your shoulders. And of course, for the guys here in the audience, hair loss treatments. But when I tell you that we're in this next decade about to see this extraordinary period of discovery in why we age, and the conversation is going from age as inevitability to age as a disease, right? The thing that we think of as most difficult to create abundance in is time. But here's a crack in the door to creating abundance for us in time. So I'm going to try and leave, we'll try and leave 2 minutes for questions. We're living in an amazing time. A negative mindset will never give you a positive life. And as you go home and re-meet your family and friends and coworkers and share with them the excitement here, please share with them how extraordinary this time is to be alive. As I try and teach at every executive program, it's just a mindset here that the world's biggest problems are the world's biggest business opportunities. You know, you can lovingly, proudly go and slay the biggest problems on the planet, create incredible wealth, and make the world a better place. And what we teach as well to our GSP alumni, our Global Solutions Program participants, that the best way to become a billionaire is help a billion people. You know, we are truly living during the most extraordinary times ever in human history. My advice for you here is don't blink. The world is accelerating. I'm going to be later today, I'm going to be at 3 o'clock in Franciscan A and B. If you want to continue this conversation with me to talk about how do you think about abundance in your companies, in your lives, please join me there. And then tomorrow at 1:50, I think one of the most important things that all of us have in our toolkit, the single most important thing, is our mindsets, how we think about the world. And one of the areas that myself and Salim and many of you and Naveen talk about is, what is your massively transformative purpose, right? What is your moonshot? Each of us should know our MTP. If you don't know your MTP, you're fighting with one arm tied behind your back. So tomorrow we're going to spend an hour focusing on how do you find your massively transformative purpose. And by the way, there is no right answer or wrong answer. And your MTP can change over time. My MTP in the beginning of my life, through my 20s into my 30s, was focused on making humanity a multiplanetary species. It's still there, but not front and center. And then through X Prize and Singularity University, it was focused on solving the world's grand challenges. And today, it's on extending the healthy human lifespan. So your MTP and your moonshots can change. If you don't have one, please join me tomorrow at 1:50 in the Imperial Theater to focus more on finding your MTP and your moonshot. If you'd like these slides, please share them. Just send an email to slides@diamandis.com, and my server will send it to you back. We've got 5 minutes for a couple of questions, and then I'll continue that Q&A this afternoon. Can we get the lights up in the room, and perhaps you can shout the questions, or we have some mic runners, and I can answer. We'll pick 2 or 3, and then we'll go from there. Please, thank you.
Hi, my name is Nancy. My question is about education. If we all believe in this, what are we doing in K through 12 to make the next generation ready to take these on and move it farther?
So that's a great question. And one of the things that I want to just really say is I do believe that SU needs to be doing more in this area. It's difficult. We are growing as fast as we can, but it's an area that I feel that this university needs to uplift at least the junior high school and high school program. I know I shouldn't be saying that and committing us to anything there, but I do believe that. I think our K through 12 program is fundamentally broken. I wrote a whole white paper. It's on diamandis.com. You can go there. And how I have 2 8-year-old boys, how I'd reinvent the educational system. I think most of the stuff that we learn is for a different century, right? For a century where we wanted to churn out industrial workers and everybody had to learn the same stuff and go through the same exams and so forth. The things that is valuable to me in my life as an entrepreneur and probably valuable to you, to find my purpose in life, to find what I'm passionate about, not what my parents tell me, not what the world tells me, what I want to do, to be able to to learn how to communicate passionately about the things I care about, how to create a logical argument, how to be an entrepreneur, all the fundamentals. We don't teach those things in school, and I think we need to, right? So I do think we need to reinvent how we educate. But then how do we bring to the table virtual reality and AI to create a historic lesson where I go back to ancient Greece and I stand before Plato and I see a virtual version driven by an AI avatar that is as accurate as possible, and I have a conversation, right? Or how do I create a world in which when I've got my augmented reality goggles on and I've got 5G connectivity and everything is an education. I see something drop and I learn about gravity and acceleration and I can watch the plot, and everything I do is a learning experience. Every place I walk is a history experience. This is the possibility, right? We can transform. But that only lasts another 15 years until all of a sudden we're connecting to the cloud. And will we? Should we? What are the ethics there? These are the conversations we're here to have. These are the conversations I don't have anyplace else. These are the conversations that make SU unique. We have time for one more question. We'll let the mic runner decide. Thank you.
I'm so glad you brought up Plato, because there's an old saying that if Aristotle were alive today, he'd be astonished because of all the new technologies. But Plato wouldn't be surprised at all because the issues he's concerned about are just the same. So I want to know, how are you going to address, how are you going to see it that people only have children when they want them and can take care of them, and how people are going to be more loving to their children and not pass on the pains and fears that they suffered from in childhood?
Yeah, so those are extraordinarily valid questions that I hear more and more. And let me give you a frame to think about this, if I may. I was talking about this earlier at the Exponential Families Lunch, actually at the alumni session this morning, that for almost all of human history, and cavemen, quote unquote, started sort of 100,000 years ago. But for all of human history, our life was about fundamental survival. It was about being able to survive disease, being able to figure out where I'm going to get water from or food from. It was, the average lifespan was, into your 30s if you were lucky. We're just now at a moment in time where we can take a vacation from survival, where we can start to think about how we make the world better. I think one of the things we need to be teaching in school is empathy, right? Instead of multivariable calculus. Learn that if you need, but let's understand how to be empathic to each other. There are technologies that can support us. One of the things I've wanted to do in the X Prize front is an empathy X Prize using VR that allows you to put yourself in the place of someone else who's being wronged and feel what that feels like. But yes, what you said, everything you said is absolutely correct. And it's that and the things I said. It's not and or, it's and. So all of us here, and I've met so many of you who have a point of view, please bring these things to the SU ecosystem. I think there are very few places on the planet that are having these kinds of conversations. We're finally at a point where an individual, you, and all of us can attack and solve problems at a scale that was only possible by governments. Our platform that we have to speak to the world and show the world solutions has never been stronger. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. Enjoy the summit. Looking forward to meeting many of you. Thank you.